Now, I'd like to officially welcome you. We are talking psychology and UX, and we are talking about how evidence-based techniques can improve your customer experience. Awesome. Jeff, if you wouldn't mind just admitting the extra people while I'm chatting through, that would be amazing. We do have a little bit of housekeeping to cover off first. So my name is Nicole Sterling. I'm going to be your facilitator for today. I do want to let you know that the webinar is being recorded, and I like to do a little quality check before I send that one out. So in all likelihood, it will go out Monday or Tuesday once we've done a little bit of trimming of the editing. So keep an eye on your inbox for that one. We are taking questions, so please pop anything that you've got that is top of mind into the chat box, and we will filter through those towards the end. And I also wanted to mention that Cynthia has kindly pulled some poll questions together for you. So it'll give you a chance to have a couple of little games in there, but also for us to get to know you a little bit better, since you will be learning an awful lot about us along the way today. Now, before I go on, you have two awesome companies hosting you for today. So first up, we have Sitback. Sitback Solutions is an Australian-based human-centered design and development consultancy group. Sitback combines psychology-led user experience and customer software development to create innovative experiences for your customers. And Sitback has recently supported digital transformation with organisations such as Woolworths, Subaru, New South Wales Treasury, Foxtel, People's Choice, and also Lifeline. And your other host for today is Acquia. So Acquia is the open digital experience platform that enables organisations to build, host, analyse, and communicate with their customers at scale through websites and digital applications. And as the trusted open source leader, we use artificial intelligence to produce better business outcomes for CX leaders. And some of our customers include Tennis Australia, TransLink, Centara, Lululemon, MediaCorp, and Johnson & Johnson. So with that little introduction over, I'll quickly give you a top line overview of our agenda for today. We have some really amazing content to cover off. We are aiming to have you out of here within 60 minutes. So I do like to finish up on time. Some of the topics that we will cover will include how to use behavioural insights to catalyst behavioural change, the effect of human biases on the way we design for and interact with websites, and how to make a compelling case to your organisation to invest in a UX review of your own website. So those are just a handful. Obviously, Cynthia will go into these in a little more detail. And so on that note, I'm going to introduce our speakers for today. Now we have first up will be Cynthia Tang. She is a registered psychologist and experienced design team lead over at Sitback, who is one of the Acquia partners. For the past 5 years, she has led the XD team in work across a broad range of clients, from Citibank to Luna Park, to Starlight Children's Foundation charity, solving complex UX problems and giving a voice to the user. She is a champion of the design thinking methodology and acts as a true advocate for human-centric solutions. And then we also have Jeff Lynn. He is the Director of Solutions Engineering for Asia Pacific and Japan at Acquia. And he recently joined Acquia. I think it's been, what, 3 or 4 months now, Jeff, give or take. He has worked for almost 20 years as a sales solution specialist, managing and directing pre-sales efforts for Microsoft, Oracle, and more recently, API. And so on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Cynthia to kick off our topic for today.
Thanks, Nicole. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Let me just share my screen and we can get going. Okay, great. Can everyone see my screen? I can't see everyone, so yeah, okay, great. Okay, great. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me. I'm really excited for this webinar today. It's going to be jam-packed with lots of evidence-based psychology principles that hopefully you can leverage to improve your website's UX and also digital presence. So to warm us up, I thought let's do a quick pub quiz. The very first question I have for you guys is, how long do you actually think is the average human attention span? Hopefully, by me asking you this, I've caught your attention for now as well.
Awesome. So that poll is open at the moment. We have 4 answers to choose from. So 8 seconds, 12 seconds, 45 seconds, 1 minute and 10 seconds. And I see we've got quite a few votes going in at the moment. Looks like 75% of you roughly have popped a vote in. So if the rest of you want to do that, we will close this one out in about another 5 more seconds if you haven't had a chance. Go on and just pop in a vote. All right, so I am going to close that one out now. All right. So hopefully you are seeing those results. We are sitting at 55% of you have said that 8 seconds is the length, average human attention span length. 29% 12 seconds and 14% said 45 seconds, and just a tiny 2% of you said it would be 1 minute and 10 seconds long. So Cynthia, what is the actual answer?
The actual answer, majority of people have gotten right. It is actually 8 seconds. Interestingly though, in 2000, the average attention span of a human was about 12 seconds long, but a recent study by Microsoft actually found that our attention span has dropped to 8 seconds. And so that shrunk nearly 25%. And it is continuing to fall. And this is a trend that will continue. So when you consider that the average attention span of a goldfish is about 9 seconds, this trend is not exactly encouraging for people like us, for marketers. And so I guess the question is, why is this happening? And our main culprit is probably due to largely information overload. In today's digital age, we are constantly bombarded with an ever-growing stream of information through multiple platforms and channels. So then how can we capture and hold our customers' attention just long enough amongst the sea of competing information? Well, hopefully what I share with you today will provide you with some evidence-based psychological shortcuts on how to reduce cognitive overload for your on your website for your customers. So like Nicole mentioned, these are a few of the things that we'll cover today. I won't go through this list again, but yes, hopefully you'll be able to learn a little bit more about heuristics and biases and how we can leverage this as well when it comes to website UX. So to start, I guess, what do you think makes a good user experience? Well, there's actually quite a number of different layers to what makes a good user experience. As you can see here in the diagram on the left-hand side, this is known as the user experience hierarchy of needs model. And so it states that for us to have good UX, not only does it have to be functional, reliable, usable, and also convenient, but ideally an experience should also be pleasurable and meaningful. This is actually based on a famous psychologist theory called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So it's quite popular. If you've heard of it, then great. This theory is where he proposes that the more basic needs, things like food, water, and shelter, so our physiological needs, actually needs to be covered before we can focus on the secondary or higher levels of the pyramid, things like self-actualization, which is where we're reaching a person's full potential. So the same concept can be applied to UX. We need to make sure that we've covered all the basics first. You know, if an interface or system is not reliable, if it's not functional or usable, it's going to be really difficult to even try and create a pleasurable or meaningful experience. So to ensure that your website covers the basics of good UX, so that it's functional, reliable, and also usable, you can firstly leverage the use of what we call heuristics in the design of your website. So in the world of website UX, heuristics are actually often discussed from the perspective of a website's must-have. And they can actually serve as really helpful guidelines for good UX. But what exactly is a heuristic? So the word heuristic loosely comes from the ancient Greek meaning to find or to discover. And so mostly a heuristic is a guideline. It's an experience-based approach to problem solving. And to sum it up, it's essentially like a mental shortcut because we naturally lean on heuristics to make quick decisions in the real world, as it's often driven by uncertainty. So one thing I'd like to call out, and it's important to know, is that heuristics can actually lead to also a thing called cognitive biases. And this causes us to commit certain fallacies. And so heuristics are the shortcuts that we use to reduce task complexity when it comes to judgment and choice. But the gap between what we'd normally do and the heuristically determined behavior leads to what we call biases. So heuristics and biases are two sides of the same coin. So know that you can also leverage these biases in your website to tap into and influence your users' behaviors. It's important that we also have an awareness of both of these things when it comes to building great UX on your website. So to help you with learning more about these biases, we've also got a PDF set of bias cards that we'll be sending to everyone who's attending this webinar today. However, to say thank you for sharing your time with us, I'd also like to offer you the opportunity to get a pack of these cards in real life. At the end of the session, we'll give you more details on this if you're interested, so stick around. I've talked a little bit about heuristics and biases, but why do we actually need them in web design? Well, the benefit of leveraging the use of heuristics and biases in web design will allow us to actually create UX that optimizes on your customers' first impressions and maintains their engagement. It can also allow us to design for frictionless flow, things like tapping into and also leveraging off people's mental shortcuts, influencing people's decision-making, and also nudging people towards taking action, such as engaging with our website. I'll now actually like to take you through a few heuristic examples, which you should keep top of mind when either you're designing and developing your new website, or even when you're evaluating an existing website. So the very first one that I'd like to take everyone through is the availability heuristic. Now, the availability heuristic actually describes our tendency to use information that comes to mind quickly and easily when we're making decisions about the future. So the easier it is to think of an example of something, an entity or an event, we think, oh, I remember this, so it must be important. It's a classic subjectivity is not reality moment, essentially. We can leverage this heuristic when we remind a user of a problem that they face. So by keeping it top of mind for them, they'll more likely consider it a problem worth solving for, because they'll perceive it to be more significant than it actually is. So when you think of your key website landing page design and also the copy on your website, make sure that you're focusing the design and the messaging on the problems that your product solves. So not what it does. For example, if you can see here on the screen, this is actually taken from HelloFresh. And so they stress the message of, we save you serious money, stress, and time. And this is much more impactful than saying something like fresh food delivered to your doorstep. It's reminding the user that preparing for meals are expensive, it's stressful, and also time consuming. So by doing this, they're hopefully trying to remind the user the problem of getting meals on the table as being an effortful task, and makes it much more significant of a problem than it actually is. This message is more likely then to drive the user into considering buying into the idea of HelloFresh to help them resolve this significant problem. So as you can see in this example, they've also made sure to really cut all irrelevant information from their design on their homepage, because they know that every irrelevant message, will dilute the relevant ones. Now, another heuristic I'd like to show you today is the Familiarity Heuristic. And this heuristic actually describes our tendency to favor the familiar over the strange. And this heuristic occurs because we actually equate familiarity with safety. We've developed this heuristic as a way to protect ourselves from danger. And most of the time this serves us well, but it can also form into a bias known as the mere exposure effect. So this mere exposure effect is where people will more likely consider the familiar option being the best option, even if it's not the most logical decision. I'm sure most of you may have been in a similar situation before in the past. And so based on our understanding of this known cognitive bias, it makes sense that we try and avoid deviating our website from known design conventions in order to be viewed more favorably by our customers. So for example, a common design convention is utilizing the placement of your logo in the upper left of your header. And if the user clicks on it, then it will always take them back to the home page. If you move away from this known design pattern, it's going to throw your users off, and it will potentially make them view your website and brand feel unfamiliar. This also applies to the language that you use. So if you think about it as well, we can also apply this concept into making a digital experience and its process feel familiar by mimicking a process from the real world. This makes experiences much more enjoyable. So if you think about it, when you're choosing a movie to watch on Netflix, that was actually designed to mimic the feeling of scanning the shelves of a video store. As you can see in this example here, they've ordered each of the movies or TV shows side by side visually down a line. And so that's actually mimicking the same experience we used to have back when video stores was a thing, when we would walk down the aisle, walk down and look at the videos that's on the shelf. This familiar process actually makes us feel more comfortable and more likely to build a continued engagement with Netflix. So the third and last heuristic that I wanted to share with you all today is known as the Affect Heuristic. So as you can guess by its name, the Affect Heuristic actually refers to how we can rely on our emotions when we're making decisions. This allows us to actually reach a conclusion quickly and without much effort. So to encourage your users to make a decision and to reach a conclusion quickly about your brand, or to help move them further down the funnel, we can actually tap into their emotional response through the clever use of visuals and content. This allows us to keep emotion at the forefront on your key pages, like your homepage or your landing pages, if you use powerful, evocative language, photography, and also colors. These are all very important things because it can actually determine whether or not they'll likely stay on and use your website in that split second that they land on. So notice how here in this example I've got on the screen, Airbnb actually uses the richly charged idea of home throughout its design. They know that traveling can be a pain, especially the logistics of organizing accommodation. And they also know that renting out a stranger's home can actually feel quite unsettling. Before, I guess, the concept of Airbnb, there was never really the idea of, staying at a stranger's home when you're traveling. So they utilize the concept of being welcomed home. That's much more comforting. And by tapping into that emotion through the wording, the imagery used, the natural greenery, they're able to elicit a much more positive experience and emotion to entice the user to stay on their website and to consider and explore further. So the affect heuristic also comes into play when you use real-life photography of people. There's actually compelling evidence to suggest that this will get you higher conversion rate than using a photo or screenshot of your product, because it's generating a much more immediate emotional response. Research has actually also found that images of people are much more memorable, and it increases our feelings of empathy. And so this in turn makes us more suggestive and open to buying. So a quick poll here for everyone. Can you guess by what percentage was there a boost in conversion rate when they included an image of a person on the landing page on the right? So I'll show it to you guys again here. So I think we will need to start the poll. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So hopefully, well, you're all voting very, very quickly. So that makes life The question, though, in case you missed it, was by how much did including a picture of a person increase the conversion rate of Basecamp's landing page? The answers, your choices are 15%, 21%, 39%, or 47%. And it's looking like roughly 75% of you have popped in a vote already. So we might leave it open for about another 5 seconds, see if we can get to the majority having voted on this one. So we'll give another 5 more seconds if you want to put in an answer. Awesome. All right, so we might just close that one out then and pop the results up. So 45% have said the answer is 47%. And then from there, we've got 31% of our guests saying 39%, 17% of the audience saying 21%, and then 7% of you have said 15%.
Interesting. Cool. I think, well, then majority of you are right on the money. This was actually a famous case study from Basecamp in their early days, back when they were called High Rise, as you can see in the photo there. But they actually found that showing a photo of a person to a landing page boosted their conversions by a whopping 47%. So as you can see, the person page, even though it was much more shorter and there was less information about the product, there was a 47% increase in paid signups than the long form design, which is shown on the left-hand side. And they actually went on to test different types of images of people, and they found that big photos of smiling customers worked the best. So that's utilizing the affect heuristic. And so that was the 3 heuristics I wanted to take you through today. As mentioned before, we can use heuristics as guidelines to keep UX top of mind when designing a new website, but we can also utilize them to systematically and quickly determine an existing website's usability. Over time, UX practitioners have actually developed various heuristics to use when evaluating an interface design, but the most popular one to this day comes from Jakob Nielsen in 1994. Who came up with the 10 key heuristics. And as you can see on the screen here, these are the 10 heuristics that UX practitioners often use when evaluating a website. Obviously, these aren't the only 10. There's a lot more, but these are the most popular ones that practitioners often utilize. One of the heuristics that we often see missed in a lot of websites is the consistency and standards heuristic, which states that users should not have to wonder whether different words, situations, or actions mean the same thing. Websites should follow platform and industry conventions. Whilst new designs look nice visually, if it doesn't maintain consistency with other website design patterns, then it's going to be increasing your users' cognitive load because you're forcing them to learn something new. This is derived from the familiarity heuristic that I just spoken about. So one of the examples I gave before was utilizing the top left-hand corner of your header for your logo. And when you click on the logo, it takes the user back to your homepage. This is a known design convention. When you break away from this, typically it causes people to feel unfamiliar with it, and therefore also find it difficult to use because they're forced to now have to relearn what they've previously experienced. So as UX practitioners, we often utilize these 10 heuristics to assess a website's usability, to find flaws in the interface design. We typically start by defining what we want to test. So whether that's the entire website or a part of it, by understanding the web analytics. And we use this so that we can pinpoint what are the key pages or top pages that your customers always utilize, and where are the key drop-off points. Once we have an understanding of this, we can then identify the pages that we should be focusing our analysis on. We also then want to have an understanding of your website's user groups. You know, who are they? What are their goals? What are their needs? What are the things that they typically do when they come to your website? With an understanding of that, we can then pick key tasks or key flows on your website that they'll complete, and we'll be assessing the pages that they come into contact with to complete those key tasks. And we'll be assessing on each of those pages things that break away from these heuristics and we'll be flagging these usability issues according to how severe and critical they are. If you have access to a UX practitioner, it's recommended that you do run a heuristic evaluation on your website, especially if you've not reviewed it before, or if your website has actually grown a lot since its inception and there's been new pages or new designs or new components that's been added to it. This will help you get started. And to help you get started, you can actually try our UX checklist as a starting point to help see whether your website requires further review by a UX practitioner. And we'll send a link to this checklist after the webinar as well. And we'll be sending it to everyone who's attending today. So once you complete a heuristic evaluation and you now have a list of findings and recommendations, what do you do with it? Our recommendation is that you try and implement as many of the quick wins as early as possible, and also consider A/B testing any ambiguous or contentious areas where there may be more than one potential solution. If you've got your own internal developers to work through this list of optimization items, then great. Many of our clients also choose to do this through our support and optimization service, where they can actually both tackle the outcomes from the heuristic evaluation and also other day-to-day website requirements like bugs, functionality changes, and also performance enhancements to speed up your website. So I talked a little bit about heuristic evaluations, and I talked about heuristics. Another aspect from psychology that we can apply to UX is our understanding of human memory. From research, we know that people's memory play a large role in how they process and perceive information online. So by knowing how memory works, we can actually create human-centered interface, which corresponds to the natural abilities of people and save their effort and also boost usability. The biggest issue with human memory is our short-term memory. Our short-term memory is quite fragile, it degrades really quickly, and it's also subject to a lot of errors. Forgetting occurs because our memories actually interfere with and disrupt one another. A famous psychological experiment has shown that the store of the short-term memory is actually 7 plus or minus 2 items. So our maximum is probably holding 9 items in our short-term memory, and at a minimum, we will be able to hold at least 5 items. But modern estimates have actually shown that our short-term memory capacity is actually lower now, around 4 to 5 items. And if you take into consideration the thing that we talked about earlier with our attention span dropping as well, this definitely isn't great news. And so because of this, UX practitioners should try to help make people utilize these limitations a little bit better, and to not have to make people remember things from one task to another or from one page to another in websites. The good thing is our short-term memory limitations can be improved through a process called chunking. And so chunking is a process where it's been found that humans actually process information better when we put it into smaller groups. We need to chunk larger or complex pieces of information into smaller chunks for clarity. Showing too much information all at once can lead to what we call cognitive overload. And this happens when we don't have enough memory capacity to process or remember things properly. Based on the concept of chunking, it's also really important to care about things like the concentration ratio of things that you're displaying on your website. So if you present several choices, buttons, options all at once, you can most likely expect that it's going to take more time and effort for your customers' short-term memory to work them over. And this can actually distract them from making the final decision or key interaction we want them to take on your website. This is one of the root causes of inefficient landing pages or sales funnels. Even if they're stunningly designed, with great visuals, an over-distracted user is going to go away before your conversion can even happen. So what I'm saying though is not to, limit the items on your website into only 5 or less than 5 items. I'm suggesting that you consider dividing the objects on the screen or on your page into groups of primary, secondary, and also tertiary importance. So in this example here, this credit card landing page is quite overwhelming. There's conflicting call to actions. So as you can see here, they've got a call to action to check for offers. They then also have a link to learn more here. And also they've displayed all the credit cards that the user can browse through. If we think back to why someone would be looking at this page, we know that we want to help them move them further down the consideration path. And that is around understanding whether they qualify for a credit card even to begin with. But here, Chase is offering them just to browse and explore a range of credit cards, to learn about the offers, to read more about the cards. And so what they can do here instead is to choose just the one goal for the landing page and then base their designs around that. Less is more when it comes to CTAs on a page. A better example that utilizes less conflicting elements on a page, for example, is the Citibank credit card page that we previously designed for. Here, we've divided the objects on the page into groups of primary, secondary, and also tertiary importance. The most important component of this page is right at the top here, which encourages the users to interact with the card suitability tool to help them narrow down on the card options below. Similarly, we've also reduced, as you can see in this example here, any conflicting call to actions and have only kept one consistent call to action of apply now on the People's Choice credit card landing page. Chunking can also actually be effectively applied to your copy content. And Nielsen actually conducted a study which shows that headlines of 5 to 6 words work most effectively when compared with extensive headlines that present a full sentence. This is again tied to the concept of chunking because we know that we can process shorter titles faster and more efficiently. A great example is from one of our clients, Lifeline Australia, as it focuses on making sure that their headlines are short and sharp so that their content is going to be easily digestible and memorable, especially for someone who may be reading this information under high stress. When creating website heading titles, so keep it short because we know people don't read much online. Keep it rich in information sent by clearly summarizing the target keywords, and also front load with the most important keywords because users often scan only the beginning of your header. Also, it needs to be understandable out of context because headlines often appear without content underneath it. And this also is better for search engine results as well. And finally, it needs to be predictable so that your customers know whether the content that they're going to be clicking into is in line with what they're expecting, because people don't return to sites that promise more than they actually deliver or doesn't meet their expectations. So it may feel like UX web design can be subjective at times, but hopefully through some of those principles that I've walked you through, it's giving you a clear idea of how you can ensure that you're utilizing evidence-based techniques for good design. But there are also other known principles of design that people can leverage when it comes to ensuring that there's higher conversion rates on your website. I would like to introduce you to the concept of conversion-centered design. And this is actually a framework developed by the co-founder of Unbounce. And they've developed it for building high converting marketing campaign pages. It encompasses all of the persuasive design techniques and psychological triggers that you can use to get visitors to take action on your landing pages. And it has also been proven that if you follow this approach, it can lead to more leads, sales, and also signups on the key pages. So here are the 7 principles of conversion design. And today I'd like to take you through a few of them as examples. As you can see, the very first principle is around creating focus, building structure, staying consistent, showing benefits, drawing attention, designing for trust, and finally, reducing friction. So the very first conversion design principle I'd like to take you through is creating focus. We know that people can get overwhelmed when they're presented with a large number of options to choose from. This is a well-known cognitive bias, actually, known as the choice overload effect. We can apply our understanding of this to landing page designs to ensure that we're driving more conversion. And this is through keeping your landing page targeted for the one key goal. There's strong evidence as well that by having one goal on your page, it will make visitors more likely to take action because it's less taxing on their cognitive load. So how can you create focus? Start by answering the question of what is the main action I want my visitors to take on this page? The more we can align the page to a single goal, the more likely the page will convert. And you can also start to create focus by doing things like removing website navigation links, or taking out any unnecessary links to things like your social channels, hiding nice to know information in light boxes or collapsible sections. This can be also really useful for SEO purposes because by increasing the keyword density on the page, this is also going to be less visually overwhelming for your customer. Also, make sure that it's obvious what you want your visitors to do next by providing only one path forward. So, for example, whether that's clicking on a call to action button or filling out a form. We know realistically that people can only focus on one thing at a time. The more choices we give our visitors on a landing page, the more likely it is that they will click away. The more links there are on a page, the lower the conversion rate tends to be. And there's actually evidence for this, as Unbounce has done several experiments looking at this. The second conversion design principle I want to take you through is around building structure. We know that to drive conversion, we shouldn't just dump content all over the place. And heat map studies have actually shown that there are two main patterns that your visitors will follow when they're reading online. If you build your pages to follow your users' natural reading pattern, it will improve their speed in information consumption and also make it a much more seamless viewing experience. So the very first viewing pattern is known as the F pattern. So if you're working with a page that has a lot of copy, the F pattern might be the one for you. Visitors will typically, as you can see, start out in the top left corner, look to the right of the screen, and then down the left side again until they hit another element or line of copy that catches their attention. By creating this F-based pattern in your page, it will allow your users to move through the content much more easily, especially if there's a lot of text. Now, what happens then if you don't have a lot of text? Well, then you can utilize what we call a Z-shaped pattern. A Z-shaped pattern is great for pages, which is light on text. And this is how your readers will typically approach a page when they're reading it with less copy. As you can see, this pattern is shown by alternating between left and right aligned content blocks in your landing page structure. This is going to help break up the page in a more appealing way and creates a natural flow for the eye to follow through as they scroll. This is an example where we've utilized this design pattern for one of our clients, People's Choice. As you can see, a majority of their landing pages utilize the Z pattern. Okay, and the third conversion design principle that I want to take you through is the idea around staying consistent. We've talked about this previously, keeping in line with known conventions. This also applies to the styling that you're using on your website. And this actually allows you to build a much stronger relationship with your customers through every touch point you have with them because it's always consistent. So ideally, you should try and use the same fonts and colors and styles across your landing page and across all the different pages within your website. Try and resist the urge to, try something really wildly different or experimenting with a completely new style. As a rule of thumb, we always recommend our clients to stick with 2 fonts, one for headers, one for body copy, and no more than 3 main colors on your page. On the topic of staying consistent, hopefully most of the people here are familiar with the concept of message matching. This is a concept that most marketers are also familiar with. And that's around ensuring that your messaging is matched on your ad pages and onto your landing pages. But there's also a lesser known cousin to message match that often gets overlooked, and that is known as design match. So this is a measure of actually how well your landing page design matches the visuals in your advertisement. This is in line with the concept of staying consistent. So make sure you pull through the design elements from your hero image, the color schemes from your visual ads onto the key landing pages that your user will land on once they interact with the ad. This is because our brains process visual information up to 60,000 times faster than text. And that means design is going to be the very first thing your visitors will notice on their journey from pre-click to post-click. And to make the landing page feel relevant to what they saw before, you need to ensure that you're creating a really strong feeling of coupling in the minds of your users. Then another key conversion principle to keep in mind is around building trust. On your website, your users are taking a leap of faith, especially when they're clicking through from an ad. The internet is full of sketchy websites and spams, and sometimes they know that it's too good to be true. So if you know that this is going to be the first time someone is interacting with your brand, you need to design for trust on those key pages. And this will help prove your credibility. And you can do this by putting together social proof that's not just convincing, but also believable. So oftentimes people, when they see testimonials on a page, they think it's fake, or they think it's not that relevant, or they may skip over it. But one way you can counteract that is to make sure you're using a real headshot photo of a real person. Make sure that you're also highlighting key details, things like their full name, and also featuring multiple testimonials. Reason why we're saying feature multiple testimonials is because this is going to leverage an effect known as the bandwagon effect. We know that through this effect, people are more likely to interact with your brand if they feel like other people are also doing this. And so you can dial this up by including a collection of reviews on your website. By doing this, we're leveraging off people's tendency to do things because other people are doing it or believe the same. If we're demonstrating testimonials and reviews to showcase that other people are purchasing your products, your visitors are going to more likely try something for themselves because it seems like everyone else is doing it. This is shown in one of our health insurance clients' website, this example here, where we've designed it to showcase 3 testimonials at once with additional testimonials displayed within that carousel. Now, outside of the 7 principles of conversion design, one extra tip that I'd like to share with you today is around considering leveraging the buy now effect, which actually describes a specific word priming scenario where the reading of the word buy can actually cause people to think about its phonological twin, buy. So this happens especially when we're tired. So when our frame of mind shifts to think of the verb buy, it can potentially influence our behavior subconsciously. The buy now effect shows that we can drastically change our consumption behavior based on priming words. By exposing people to one piece of information, it can affect their response to something else afterwards. Obviously, you need to take into consideration the ethical considerations with using this technique. And if you recall, there was a famous misuse of this priming phenomenon that occurred during the American presidential election by Cambridge Analytica in 2020. So I've shared with you all a lot of UX tips and tricks, and I'm sure hopefully you've identified a few UX things that you want to improve on your website. And hopefully some of you may feel like you're ready, but then how do you actually get your business to come on board? So I've got a poll question for everyone here. In your current organization at the moment, who actually has the capability to look after the UX?
Awesome. So that one's now live. The choices that you have this time around, so you do it yourself, which is a tough gig. I have an internal UX team. I employ a freelancer. I use a UX agency or other. So if you have another other option, just pop that one into the chat. We can read that one out. Doesn't look like any of you do at the minute. We've got quite a few, about 60% have popped in a vote at this point. So if you've got a couple of seconds free, we'll just pop in an answer and we'll read those out in just a moment. So I'll leave it open for a couple more seconds. And all right, so we might just close that one out. Looks like majority have got an answer in now. So results wise, 39% are sitting on using an internal UX team. 22% of you are doing it yourself, which I think you are amazing, so kudos to you. And then 25% use a UX agency, 12% employ a freelancer, and I did actually have 4%, so 2 people did say that they had an other option. So if you want to pop those in the chat or just send across anonymously to Cynthia, please do that as well. Any thoughts there, Cynthia?
Yeah, that's interesting, and it's great for the majority of people who have already an in-house UX team. Then you can obviously very easily leverage them to help you start considering some of these things on your website. But if you don't, then I guess the question is, how do you convince your business to allow you to invest in UX, or at least to give you the resources to utilize help from a UX practitioner, especially if you're a smaller business. And so to start, one thing you can consider then is to use analytics to actually identify key pages or key user flows on your website and find which ones are underperforming and see how they're currently performing against industry standards. So you can identify key metrics on these pages, things like your conversion rate, is it currently month-on-month conversion rate improvements, or has it stagnated? Your bounce rate, is it underperforming when you look at your industry standards? Also, the number of support requests and type of support requests that's coming through. Is your support center overloaded with requests? Also, what type of requests are coming through? This will give you insight into confusing points or information gaps that's missing from your website. Also, your website speed performance. And if your metrics are low and you haven't seen any improvements over time, that's a strong case that you can present back to the business to consider investing in your website's UX to boost those numbers up. Or you can also provide a simple calculation to demonstrate return on investment. So, for example, if you're an e-commerce website and if your users typically spend $40 per visit, but 50 people abandon your website each day, you're losing roughly around $2,000 a day. And if you take a full year into consideration, that's $730,000. So let's assume that a $50,000 investment in research, UX design and testing would remedy those key issues for your users that's causing them to bounce off. With those issues addressed, you would be on a new path to increased revenue and potentially breaking even on the investment in roughly 25 days, if my maths is correct. Yes. So another quick question I have for everyone then is, if you've already jumped the hurdle of getting buy-in from your business to invest in UX, the next thing you're going to need to prepare for is understanding the different options you have available to look at your website's UX. For those of you who know, how do you implement UX So how much do you budget actually for UX related activities each year?
Awesome. So that poll is now up as well. We have answers from up to 15K, 16 to 30K, 31 to 60K, 61K to 100K, or 100K plus, or you don't have a UX budget specifically assigned. So I see a few of you are popping votes in there. This is great. It just helps us get to know you a little bit better, since you are learning an awful lot from Cynthia at the moment and getting to know her pretty well. So I do see we've had quite a few votes. We've had quite a few answers popped in. I'll leave it open for about another 5 or so seconds if you want to pop in an answer there, and then we'll just share those results around. And I guess it's nice because it also helps you to understand where your budget sits within this group as well. So I think the majority are in at the moment. So let me close that one out, and I will share the results now. So we have a majority of 48% sitting on I don't have a UX budget. And then we have from there 15% are 100K plus. And then where are we at? 15% between 16 and 30K, 9% between 31 and 60, and 6% equally up to 15K, or 6% on 61 to 100K. So anything there, Cynthia?
Yeah, so what I wanted to share with everyone is that no matter your budget, there is ways that you can improve your UX, and there are a different number of options, small, medium to large, that you can use to help make your case less daunting and also provide different cost options back to your business. So, for example, a small option would be conducting a heuristic evaluation. That would be much cheaper and faster. You can also, medium-sized option would be things like, taking out a website support and optimization service, with ongoing improvements against a defined roadmap that will cover both technical performance and also UX improvements. Or larger budgets then can consider things like a complete UX research end-to-end projects that involves user research, UX design, and also validating your design at the end. This is obviously the most expensive and slow type of option, but it is also the most rigorous and reliable. And to help further your case, you can utilize a popular psychology heuristic known as the door in the face technique. And this heuristic demonstrates that we're more likely to agree to a small request after first rejecting a larger one. So frame to the business the large option first, and if that's not something they have the appetite or budget for, then verbally emphasize the concession of choosing a smaller option over the initial one. The key here is to verbalize it. So you've got to say, yes, you're right, that is a lot of money, but then how about this smaller option instead? And by verbalizing that, it actually prompts the other party to reciprocate and accept the other option you're suggesting. Now, obviously, I'm not saying this will always work, but it is definitely something you can try, at least to help also make your case. And so to really drive home the value of UX to your business, also make sure you're showcasing to them the range of different benefits that you'll achieve, aside from the obvious ones such as improving conversion rates, improving cross sales, increasing customer retention and engagement. We can also encourage more return visits, have our customers more likely to recommend you to other users, and also achieve more effective marketing spend on your customer acquisition, and reducing in the longer term customer support and demand on your support team, because your customers are having a much more seamless online experience with a lot less friction. So that brings me towards the end of my talk today. I hope that you've gotten some helpful tips and guidance on how to look after your website's UX, leveraging known heuristics and psychological principles to improve your users' experience on your website. And we'll also send everyone PDF bias cards and the PDF UX checklist. Those who want to get a physical pack of bias cards, then please scan the QR code here. And also you can fill out the form so we can send it out to you. And yeah, that's it. That's me. Thank you, everyone. I know it's been a long, long talk, but hopefully you've stayed with me throughout and you've gotten some useful tips and tricks from the discussion today.
That is absolutely brilliant, Cynthia. Thank you very much for the session today. Lots of really useful hints and tips in there. I did want to just point out to our audience, we will share a PDF of Cynthia's slides. So hopefully you won't all madly taking notes like crazy, because we will share those out along with the recording. I have had a couple of questions come in. So first one here, if you could recommend one thing for me to go away and investigate or change about my website to make a difference to the conversions, what would that one thing be?
Okay, well, if I would recommend one thing for you to go away and investigate or change your website, then I would say it would be important to probably identify the key conversion pages and monitor its performance. And if you can see that there's been no improvements and the key metrics are performing poorly, then it's worthwhile considering getting a UX practitioner to review your website. Otherwise, I think it's also helpful to conduct what we call usability testing. And usability testing is where you actually put your website in front of your customers and getting real feedback from them around how they found using your website when they're completing key tasks. We find a lot of useful insights when you do usability testing, because it gives you insights into the why. You can understand why your users are behaving the way that they are on your website, and you can also understand, areas where you feel like it's not performing well. You can dig deeper into that with your users and get their actual feedback around what that experience is like for them.
Great. So hopefully that helped answer that question. I have one here from Bella, who is from People's Choice. So you showed a slide about the number of links that were on a page and the average 4.39 links. So the question is, does this include the internal links on the page along with the call to action? How does that average come about?
Yeah, so definitely the number of links on a page also includes internal links. And so it's important that you consider whether those links are necessary on those pages at that point in time. And also really it comes back down to what's the key action that you want your users to take on this page. Is it to go off to another page to read off more information, or is it to interact with your call to action buttons? And so try and obviously reduce the number of in-page links and call to actions as much as you can, but obviously don't remove every single link if it's going to help your users get the information they need to move further down the path of whatever it is that they need to complete. So yeah.
Great. Hopefully that helps, Bella. If you need any clarification, just pop another comment into the chat and we can loop back. I am conscious we're on the hour, but I do have some other really awesome questions here. So if you can hang around, please hang around. If you can't, this is being recorded, so we will definitely make sure you get a copy of that next week and you can catch the last little bit that we're talking about. There's a question from Jimmy. He's asked about what is a book that you would recommend that covers heuristics and behavior design. Is there a particular book or a resource that you find yourself turning to or that you recommend for clients?
Oh, a book. I don't have a title off the top of my head, but I can send that across after this talk. Otherwise, I would really recommend you check out Nielsen Norman's website. They have a lot of helpful UX principles and heuristics on the website, and a lot of it is evidence-based. So they do a lot of research before they publish any of these UX principles and guidelines. And so please make sure to check out Nielsen Norman's website. They're the people who had, as I mentioned before, created the 10 very popular UX heuristics.
Awesome. So another question here around A/B testing. So we're running A/B testing all the time. Why would I do UX instead, or would I do it as well as A/B testing? Yeah,
that's a really good question. So I would say as part of your tools within your UX toolkit, I would classify A/B testing as one one of the tools in which you can utilize to improve UX. However, the issue with A/B testing is that you may not necessarily know the why behind the success or failure of your experiments. So with that in mind, it's always important to supplement your A/B testing with additional research or feedback from your users so that you can understand the why. It will also be beneficial to make sure that when you're designing experiments, you are creating UX solutions based on a hypothesis of what is causing that issue and coming up with an evidence-based UX design to take into testing. So my recommendation is you should do A/B testing, but also additional UX activities to help bolster it.
Perfect, thank you. I'll do one more question here, and then I'm conscious that I've got 5 to 10 minutes for Jeff as well. So Alec has asked, what is your favorite or most obscure cognitive bias that we can leverage? Ethically, of course.
The most obscure bias. Ooh. I think definitely the mere exposure effect. I personally find that a really cool bias to leverage off. And so if you remember, I mentioned that in the talk today, the mere exposure effect is when simply showcasing or prepping or biasing people to the problem that they have, it actually makes it more top of mind for them. And so I find that quite interesting, and that's something we can leverage. It's not, I guess, unethical in a way, because you are just trying to help them resolve their problem, and only by reframing it to them and keeping it top of mind, you're just reminding them of a problem that they already have, although it may be blowing it a little bit out of proportion or keeping it too top of mind. But I think as long as your product is actually helping them resolve that problem, then it's not a bad thing.
Awesome. So hopefully that one helped you out there, Alec. Thank you very much, Cynthia. I appreciate your time today. If anyone has any other questions, please feel free to shoot them across to Cynthia or myself, and I will pass them along. So what I might do is now invite Jeff to jump in and give us a little bit of a product showcase of how this could look in action.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm very mindful of everyone's time here today. So we're going to just kind of roll through this really quickly and give you back some more time for the rest of your day. It is a Friday after all here in APJ, so I'm very mindful of that. So what I want to talk about is, a lot of the great points that Cynthia was talking about in regards to A/B testing, about testing hypotheses. When we look at it here at Acquia, we want to be considered an enabler, which is that from a technological perspective, providing you or your customers with a platform that can easily bring a lot of these assumptions and hypotheses to life. And so what I want to talk about really quick is really a product called Acquia Personalization, which is exactly that enabler that can help you get there. So in terms of what we have here is this particular platform that we have called Personalization really solves a couple different use cases. One, it can really help you test out many of the hypotheses you may be generating either yourself or your internal teams and bring them to life with a very minimal code or very little effort in a case. Now, on top of that, when we think of A/B test platforms, there's other ways to think about this. Primarily, how can we help you move that last mile to enable your customers to either get that conversion, spend more money, or perhaps upsell and cross-sell? And like all the psychological tricks that we were talking about earlier, it's really a platform to help you get to that endpoint here to really justify any kind of investments ROI that your company or your organization is actually making. And for me, I typically think of the last point of a platform, a personalization platform, which is really helping you fail fast, because in testing hypotheses, you want to get that end result as quick as possible. So if it doesn't work out, you move on and it's the next day. So in terms of what we provide here is we provide just a couple of simple things in terms of our app personalization platforms. We allow you to create very rich personalization in 3 simple steps with A/B testing without any code or low code in itself for customization purposes. And more importantly, provide you the necessary tools and dashboards to help you bring your stories to life. So what Cynthia was also talking about earlier is having different hypotheses, but ensuring you have a storyboard or a goal in mind to allow you to make that best decision. And we provide that for you from an end-to-end platform. So to give you a quick idea of how this all works is essentially we can carve up your websites or allow you to develop different components and modules within the confines of your site. If I give you a quick example here within Acquia, this is our main site here. we can essentially carve out smaller components, such as say your text, your pictures, images, and allow you to cycle through a couple different revisions and versions as users come in. So for instance, one set of users might be coming in to see text and a call to action at the very bottom. We can easily swap out a different experience for a next set of users. So for instance, rather than text, maybe it's a video, and then ultimately providing metrics to really realize whether this is actually working or not. Subsequently, we give you the additional dashboards to allow you to figure out, well, we may be missing a different component like the call to action at the very bottom to really further augment what you've come out here with your different strategies and pieces. And all of this can be done without actually any coding itself as part of our initial platform. To further augment your story, we do have campaigns and dashboards to make your realization come to life, whether it's you're optimizing for ROI, click-through rates, or conversions or whatnot. We want to give the most robust information to make the best decision per that campaign that you're running. Secondarily, we have out-of-the-box basic campaign types, what we call A/B tests, targeted personalization, or even content recommendation. So things such as, say, progressive profiling of interest, where you're looking and building, say, a user profile as they engage with different content pieces on your site, your mobile, or whatnot. So those are things that we can help you capture, because at its core of it, it's all around them having the right type of data to enable this to come to life. And for most, having things out of the box with these kind of experiments can really save you a lot of time and effort, as well as money down the line. And the last thing is, with a platform like this, right, it can be very challenging if you don't have the right type of, I guess, experience to help you onboard. And for us, not only do we have kind of an enablement team in the back end, we'll also have, say, a step-by-step personalization to help you really get started here. So for all, I mean, we really don't have too much time today, but I do want to welcome you that if you have more questions or are interested in learning about accurate personalization, not only can you reach out to me directly or our team, but certainly visit our website to find out more, to really bring some of the things that Cynthia was talking about to life. So really thank you very much today, guys. And hopefully have a wonderful Friday or Thursday, wherever you're located.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jeff. So I think that brings us all to a close at the minute. I don't see any other questions. So but if you do, please feel free to reply back to myself or the Sit Back team. I just want to say a huge thank you. I didn't get a chance to introduce Carl. He's one of the Sit Back team. He did an awesome job helping us organize today's presentation with Cynthia. Thank you very much, Cynthia. Thank you very much, Jeff. I appreciate your time. And thank you everyone for attending. I hope you have a brilliant Friday and a wonderful weekend.